Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the SPIN Conference Workshop, ABC, Transitioning from Early Intervention to Preschool. I'm happy today to share with you our two presenters. We have Sherry Umakoshi from Early Intervention, Department of Health, and we have Tiffany Kali'ia'a from the Department of Education. Without further ado, I'm going to let them introduce themselves a little bit more. Enjoy your workshop.
Thank you. So like Amanda said, we are co-presenting today. My name is Sherry Umakoshi from Early Intervention section. I am the Personnel Development Coordinator, which means that I provide training and support to both EI providers, as well as I connect with and collaborate with our early intervention, our early childhood community agencies and programs to educate and promote services and supports around children with special needs and their families. Tiffany?
Okay, so aloha, my name is Tiffany Kali'ia'a. I am the State 619 Coordinator for the Department of Education. So I help support the special education preschool programs here in Hawaii. I am a parent of 2 children who also attend public schools, and I'm happy to be here today.
The objectives today for our workshop is to provide information about how to prepare for changes in services and supports for your child, the benefits of participating in a Part C transition conference, and also learn more about the Department of Education Special Education Evaluation process. Okay. When we talk about transition, it can mean a number of things, and everybody goes through transitions in their lives. And it can be changes that include for your family, in your job, birth of a child, deployment, a variety of things. So when we talk about transition, we're looking at that movement from one situation or one setting to another, as well as those events that occur for all children and families. And what we hope to do by talking about transition and planning early is to make those transitions successful and begin working together and dialoguing together so that your child can have the most successful transition to the next setting. Okay. Some of the best ways to prepare for change, if you think of the transitions as adults you've made in your lifetime, is to, number one, be informed, right? Think about what those different options are, gathering information. The second one, start to develop positive relationships. So figuring out who is that contact person, learning about them, the setting that could be a potential environment for your child moving into. And by beginning to have those positive relationships, you can start to share those questions or feelings, that anxiety or maybe excitement that you have for your child and family as they get older and they start to learn new things and connect with new people. The fourth way that you can also prepare for change is to talk with other families. Whether it be your own friends who have children in early intervention or the DOE or other preschool settings or early childhood settings, to get an idea of what their experience is like, what the setting is like, and maybe catching some good tips to think about as you prepare for your own child and family's transition. In early intervention, we start transition very early. So at the point that your child enters early intervention, we're actually also talking about and making sure that we touch bases on transition. We want to touch bases on what those future services and placements may be, prepare for any supports or questions or things we need to prepare for ahead of time. And also, as your child gets closer to exiting early intervention, so about 3 months prior to age 3, we also start talking about a Part C transition conference as a way to start gathering information. The reason why we talk about transition so early is because families and parents all have a variety of ways and timelines that they have for their own child's transition. Some families start very early and like to take time to really look at what's out there, and other families are very quick and can make those steps and planning fairly quickly. So every family is different, and so we want to start that conversation early. as part of your child's IFSP or individualized family support plan, if they're in early intervention, is to begin that transition planning at the initial IFSP. We also touch bases, or your care coordinator would touch bases at every IFSP meeting, minimally every 6 months, to make sure they touch bases on any questions you may have, any preparation we can start to do ahead of time in the anticipation of your child exiting. It also includes looking at service options or programs that would be appropriate for your child based on what your needs are, what you visualize, and would like your child to be a part of. DOE special education is one of those options, but it's not the only option. So it does take time to look at what's out there and go through the planning process. The options that we talked about, including special education, could be private preschools or child care centers. It could also be playgroups or community programs, traveling preschools. And for some of our families who exit earlier, it could even mean the home. So transitioning back to home services or being part of your home with very minimal or a lot of services. So it really depends on where your child is at as they prepare for exiting, and talking with your early intervention team about how to make that transition most successful and how to be most prepared as a parent or caregiver for that transition. Okay. As your family gets closer to exiting EI, your care coordinator will talk about the purpose of a transition conference. And this conference is a required component of IDEA Part C. And its goal is to help with successful transitions. So we want to, as much as possible, begin to establish relationships with providers of that next environment for your child. Because we know when your child exits early intervention, your care coordinator, your services will end. So we want to start making those connections and passing that baton as soon as possible to start any preparations. We want to use that conference as a way for your family to share what your hopes and dreams, as well as your expectations and concerns are regarding your child's future, and an opportunity to also consider a range of options available in the community. So it's really that time for you to be able to ask the representative of that setting the specific questions of how your child may be able to participate there. What are the ways that any accommodations that the program can make, or what are the services that are available to support my child's learning and growth. During COVID right now, transition conferences are being held virtually through Zoom until we have approval for in-person meetings to be resumed. But the transition process and services have continued through COVID. What can you expect at the conference? At the conference, as the family or the caregiver, it's your opportunity to not only gather information, but also share information as you feel comfortable with the providers that you had wanted to meet with. Your care coordinator would facilitate the conference with you and support you and your family in that meeting with other representatives from programs that you wanted to invite. So the program representatives will share information about their program as well as the supports available to your child and family. The expectation would not be for you to make a decision at this point on which program you wanted to apply for, but it's really an information gathering and sharing time. And it's time set aside specifically for your family and child, so you can ask those specific questions or bring up the concerns that you may have in each of the settings you're looking at. Okay. Following the transition conference, what your care coordinator will do is they will continue to have discussions with you on the outcome of that conference, and if you would like more information or you'd like to go ahead and apply or make a referral to any one or two of the programs you invited, They would also support your family through that referral or application process, and also plan and assist with any next steps to help prepare your child and family for that next setting. So that would include assisting or meeting with DOE if that was one of the settings you wanted to go further with. So the Part B transition notice to DOE, if your family decided they wanted to go further and start the referral process to the Department of Education, this notice would allow early intervention to share information about your child to your child's home school, their home DOE school. With your consent, we could also include information like your child's IFSP or evaluations along with that notification. Families may opt out of signing or declining DOE Part B notice. However, if timely declined signature is not received, which is between that 3 to 4 month window of your child exiting, then by law, we would need to forward minimal information to DOE because of child fine laws. So that's IDEA laws. But that does not mean your family would need to continue with the DOE process. You can decline that referral to DOE once it's received by the home school. So it's really important to keep in communication with your care coordinator about your decision to either move forward for a DOE evaluation, a referral, or not. If you decline the DOE Part B notice, then the operation search information is also provided to your family by your care coordinator.
Okay, so now it's time to talk about what happens when you start dealing with the Department of Education. We start off with step 1, which is a request for evaluation or a referral. So like Sherry was stating earlier, if your family is already receiving early intervention services, your care coordinator will assist you in the referral process. But if your child is not receiving early intervention services, you don't have to worry, because as a parent, you can start the process on your own. It's fairly simple. You would reach out to your neighborhood's public school student services coordinator, and you would basically describe as specifically as you can the concerns that you have regarding your child's development. So some things that you might say would be like, my child is almost 3 and isn't saying anything. She just says sounds, makes noises, and points at things. Another example of a concern would be, my child is 3.5 and he doesn't play with anyone. He has younger siblings and cousins at his age, and he still won't play with anybody. Another example of a concern could be, my child is 2.5 and has difficulty with pronouncing her R's and L's, and she'll say whittle instead of little, and throws a tantrum at least twice a day. So those are some of the concerns that you could bring up to the SSC. That brings us to step number 2, which is the student focus team meeting. So based on the concerns that you raise to the SSC, the school will gather a group of a team or a group of people, which includes you, the parents, to discuss the next steps. It is important to know that the reason why there is a team in making decisions for the next step is because the eligibility process for special education services with the Department of Education is different than from the eligibility criteria for EI or early intervention services. So this is the reason why the team needs to meet with you. So in the team, you'll go to the meeting. There may be the vice principal, there may be a speech pathologist, there may be a school psychologist and other team members that are there to assist you in addressing the concerns of your child. In some situations, you and the school team may decide that an evaluation is needed because your child may have a disability. In other cases, the team might decide that your child is developing fine and that there doesn't need to be anything else done at this time. So in one of the examples I gave earlier of the child who's 2.5 years old, and has difficulty with the R's and the L's and is throwing a tantrum 2 times a day, that's a typical developing milestone for a 2.5-year-old. So that would be one of the situations where the team might decide that an evaluation is not needed at that time. But in either case where the team decides that an evaluation will be done or will not be done, it's important to know that the team is there to listen to you and your concerns and to address any questions that you may have. That brings us to our next step, step 3, which is testing and evaluations. So should you and the team decide that a suspicion of a disability is there, an evaluation will be completed. But before anything can be done, parents, you need to provide consent. Once you provide consent in writing to the school, the team has 60 calendar days to conduct and complete the evaluation process. So what does the process look like? You could probably be interviewed and you'll be asked certain things about what concerns you the most about your child. It may also ask you, and it probably will ask you, what strengths do your child have, or what can they do really well? An observation or several observations could be done, especially during this time with COVID-19. These observations could be recorded, and you may be asked to record your child doing different activities with different people throughout the day in their natural environment. So it could be at home, during snack time, maybe during playtime, maybe when you're reading a story with them at bedtime. Those are some examples of observations. Another thing that may be asked of your child is to do simple tasks like looking at a book or retelling a story or naming pictures, those kind of things. After the testing and evaluation is done, we come to our step 4, which is the eligibility conference. And once all that information is gathered, the team comes together to review your concerns and discuss the findings. At this conference, there needs to be specific criteria that the team must follow. There are eligibility criteria. There must be evidence that your child has a disability. There must be an adverse impact on his or her educational progress, and the child must be in need of special education and related services. Just a note that when the team is making these decisions, they must be sure that they are not saying that the child has a disability when the child's difficulty with learning is due to cultural differences, the family does not speak English, or they come from an impoverished background. Again, remember, like I said earlier, the important takeaway is that there's different criteria between the Department of Education's eligibility and early intervention eligibility. In the case that your child does not meet eligibility requirements and criteria, it's important that you take the time to ask the team if there are any activities that you can do at home to support your child's development, or if there are other resources that they can provide you to help you in your steps moving forward. When your child is eligible, it brings you to step number 5, which is the Individualized Education Program or IEP meeting. So that same group of people that were in your student focus team and throughout the process will be with you. They'll take all of that information that was gathered on your child and discuss and develop a plan that addresses your child's specific educational needs. Those will be goals and objectives, and those can be addressed at any time during the year. It's usually addressed annually, but it can be addressed throughout the year as you seem appropriate as a parent, or as the teacher sees that your child is either progressing really quickly through the IEP, or we need to readdress it and because they're not progressing very well. Again, like stated with the Department of Health and Early Interventions, due to COVID-19 right now, schools are doing their meetings virtually as well, but those will be either via Google Meets or WebEx.
On the next 2 slides, we have some information about how there are changes between Part C Early Intervention and Part B DOE to give your family an idea of some of the changes that will occur as they exit one system and enter another. Because Part C covers services for children birth to 3, and the focuses are slightly different. And as you move to Part B and your child gets older from age 3 to 5 for the preschool age, the focus becomes also a little bit different. It doesn't mean that one system is better than another, but the focus and the outcomes and how services are provided differ from one part of IDEA to the other. Some of the biggest differences you might think about is that the outcomes on your child's service plan will be more child and family focused with early intervention, because we focus on what your family and child outcomes and needs are as a family. They may look a lot different than when he or she transitions to the school system. We do provide services in the home with Part C, or any other natural setting that your child currently resides in. So that's also a shift when you enter the Department of Education. The way services are delivered may look very different. So that's some of those pieces that you want to think about as your child goes or shifts from home-based to a more school-based system, on what are the things that you want to prepare for, that you anticipate that you'll need to work on or transition slowly for your child and your family. This second screen has a few more of those changes that will occur from Part C to Part B. Okay. And these are the things that you can start to talk about with your care coordinator in anticipation of going through the Department of Education evaluation process, and to help prepare your child and your family. And it will help to start to bring up questions that you might want to present to your student focus team, as well as at your IEP as you develop your child's IEP. So all of that information can be very helpful and useful to make the smoothest transition possible for your child. So in summary, some of the ways that you can prepare your child for change is to start talking about your child, about what those changes might look like, what that new setting, whether you do a drive-by to get a picture of or a visual of where that will be. You can also start talking about some of the fun things that might happen, the excitement, and spending a little time seeing that site, or whether it's a early child care program. If it is with DOE, you want to make sure that you have permissions to enter campus. And because of COVID and some of the restrictions right now, you want to double check on that. You want to start thinking about things like scheduling and how much time and how that would impact services for your child, or things you want to consider. You can also see whether or not there's items that will be useful to help your child transition to that next setting, and if that's allowable to be part of that environment. And also in preparation as that setting is more confirmed, is to start a consistent routine or transition routine. Okay? And a regular routine will not only help your child feel safe and reassured, but will start to prepare your child for what that routine will look like, and start putting those steps in place. Sometimes parents also need transitions, so that could be another part where you can prepare with your care coordinator, as well as far as how, as a parent, you might need some support in preparing for that change. Sometimes our kids have an easier time adjusting, and sometimes for us as parents, I know I did, it was a lot of anxiety about what that would look like and how that would go, and worrying about my child. So those are questions that if you would want feedback or some ideas on how to best work through those transitions, are really good questions to think about. So not only to prepare for change for your child, but also you as a parent. Do we have any questions that we can share more information about?
Yeah, wow, that was a great presentation, ladies. I think that's going to be really helpful to a lot of families, so thank you. We do have some questions from families that they have shared with us, and so I'll ask and then mute myself, and you can answer as you need, okay? First question, what options do I have if I don't feel my child is ready for transition?
So when your child is in early intervention, the important thing to be most prepared for is that services with early intervention will end when your child turns 3. So we begin transition discussions early on because we know that that exit time will come. So the best thing to do is to talk with your care coordinator as far as what you envision the next steps will be, whether that's being at home with families and caregivers, at a preschool setting, or going through the DOE process. All of those settings we could provide support and tips and strategies and activities to support you. So depending on where you would like support and where your child will continue to be cared for, we want to support you as best we can in that setting.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, how is it determined if my child will be eligible to receive DOE services at home, like OT, PT, or speech?
Okay, I'll answer this one. So first of all, you'll know whether your child is eligible for related services such as speech, OT, and PT based on your child's IEP and their specific needs. Currently, a majority of the students receiving related services are receiving them face-to-face, but it is important to know that the decision of how and where the related services will be provided is made by the IEP team itself.
Right. Thank you. Next question. Is there a chance that the DOE evaluation will make a different determination in my child's services? And what do I do then?
Okay, so yes, there is a possibility that the DOE, based on the information that's provided or the evaluation results, will make a different determination in your child services than those provided by the early intervention services. So what's important to know is that you as a parent are involved in the entire process. And it's important that you address your concerns or questions or comments throughout this process so that you make sure your child is getting the best services that they need.
Great, thank you, Tiffany. Our next question is, when is a good time to transition a child to attend a preschool?
Okay, I'll answer that one. I think transition to a preschool or any setting outside of the home is really a personal or individual decision by you as a parent or caregiver. But I think if you do have that question, you should talk with your care coordinator as far as thinking about what are things your child maybe should be able to participate, or meeting with schools or potential groups, play groups and such, and seeing what preparations or what things can we support your child in being able to participate in that setting. So as a parent or caregiver, the need to or want to transition your child into a setting with other children is a very personal decision. But your care coordinator, as well as your other sources of support, can give you information and tips about the benefits of including your child in different settings and how that might look. Your care coordinator can also support you if you have questions about things like paying for preschool or childcare or an activity that may be beyond your means. So those are ways that your care coordinator can assist you in accessing those resources or helping you prepare for what that would look like if you wanted your child to participate in a setting.
Great, thank you, Sherry. Our next question is, do you know of any special education homeschool groups?
Okay, I'll address that one. I am currently not aware of any special education homeschool groups at this time. However, if that is something that you're interested in finding out, I'd highly encourage you to find people in your community who would like to do that, and perhaps you'll be the one to start it.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question. Is it unlikely to get a GE for special education?
Okay, so a GE or a geographic exception is not something that is determined by the special education IEP team or the IEP team. That is something that the receiving school, if the parent wants to apply for a GE at the beginning of the year, the receiving school will take a look at the IEP and kind of make a determination of whether they can appropriately make those accommodations for your child's needs.
Excellent, thank you. Another question. I'm worried my child is so delayed he won't benefit from pre-K.
So my suggestion here is, if you are concerned that your child has a severe delay and won't benefit from maybe a regular preschool, then I would suggest you go through that request for evaluation process that we talked about earlier, where you would go ahead and contact your neighborhood public school student service coordinator and talk about those concerns that you have, and perhaps get through the evaluation process to determine if he or she is eligible for special education services.
And if your child is with early intervention and does have a significant delay, then your care coordinator will assist you through that testing process with DOE.
Great, thank you. All right, looks like I've got one more question here. Can you talk about the differences between family-centered versus child-centered? And what is the best way to adjust my expectations when my child starts preschool?
Okay. In early intervention, one of our philosophies is family-centered care. And what that means is that you as the family, parent, or caregiver is the constant in your child's life. So we really rely upon your information and your wealth of knowledge about your child in the development of your child outcomes and goals on the IFSP. And services and frequencies and the goals that we set up are really part of your family's concerns, priorities on what you want your child to be able to learn and develop. So it may look very differently once they transition to the school setting, but the focus in early intervention really is that family focus. And how do we best support you as the family to help your child learn and grow?
And in the DOE, when we're more child-centered, we want to specifically address what each child needs to educationally progress. So it's not so much family-centered, like Sherry was saying, but more child-centered. What does a child specifically need based on his or her unique needs? And to answer the second part of the question, what can you expect? Well, based on if your child is eligible and you go through the IEP process and your child does have an individualized education program, that is what you can expect your child to be receiving once they start school or receiving special education services. If what is stated in the IEP is something that you do not agree with or you have concerns with, it's very important that you bring that up with your IEP team so you can address that and fix the program to be more specific to what you believe that your child needs.
Great answers, ladies. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm gonna open it up here for you two, Sherry and Tiffany. Is there any last words that you'd like to share or advice to families who will be going through transition soon?
My best advice to any family or caregiver is to ask your questions early, bring up your concerns or your questions to your care coordinator or your provider in preparation for transition. It's never too early to start. If you have a question, if you have that inkling, bring it up to somebody because we can help you to prepare or put those steps in place so that you have as much information as you need to make the best decision for your child.
My final thoughts would be that going through the evaluation process can seem intimidating. There'll be people that have long titles or seem really important, but we're all human. Most of us are all parents, and we're all here to support your child and you throughout this process and their education. And so please don't feel intimidated or scared. We're here for you. Ask your questions, and we're here to help you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, ladies, Sherry and Tiffany, for sharing your time and your aloha with our families at SPIN. We hope you have a great day and aloha.
Thank you.